The West is focused on reducing dependence on Russian oil and gas for obvious geopolitical reasons, but it's also an opportunity to go greener and reduce carbon emissions. That's according to Jeffrey Frankel. He's a professor at Harvard's Kennedy School. He's also a former member of the White House's Council of Economic Advisors. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mimi.
So your recommendations include ending fossil fuel subsidies. Explain why those subsidies were put in place in the first place and what happens if they're taken away.
Well, there's a variety of subsidies. They're obviously all bad for the environment. On the supply side, subsidizing the supply of oil or natural gas, or in other countries they subsidize coal. That's obviously bad for the environment. But subsidies on the demand side are especially bad for not just the environment, but for our goal of penalizing Russia for its invasion of Ukraine.
But doesn't ending fuel subsidies just make energy more expensive for the consumer? And then those on the lower end of the economic spectrum are going to be the ones to suffer?
Well, the whole idea is to make energy more expensive, to make it pay. If you subsidize it, you're artificially keeping its price below what its true cost is. I'm opposed to a gas tax holiday, which some states have done and some other countries have reduced taxes on retail refined products. I am in favor of nuclear, prolonging the life of nuclear power, particularly in Germany, where they're closing down power plants. I'm in favor of shipping more LNG, liquefied natural gas, to Europe to make up for their shortfall when they cut off imports from Russia of piped-in natural gas. But I think we need to regulate the natural gas, particularly the frackers in the U.S., to cut way down on the methane emissions, which that package would be good for the environment and good for our goal of penalizing Russia. I'm in favor of the release of the reserves from the strategic...
Actually, Jeff, I wanted to ask you about that because earlier this year, President Biden announced the release of up to 1 million barrels of oil per day from the nation's strategic petroleum reserves. Has that actually made a dent in global supply shortages?
Well, at the time of the announcement, it had some effect on the price. Some people might say that's not a high percentage of the world oil market, and it is a relatively unified world oil market. But at the same time, our allies, France and Germany and other members of the Energy Information outfit, the OECD, and in Paris also also released reserves from their strategic stockpilings. And the total, I think, is 240 billion barrels over the next 6 months. So that is enough to make a dent in it. And it is what the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was designed for. I think sometimes it's been sort of used more for political purposes, but this is exactly the sort of thing that it was intended to accomplish.
You know, as you mentioned before, the gas tax holidays, some policymakers advocate for that just to ease the pain that Americans are feeling at the pump. You think that's a bad idea?
I understand the temptation politically, but it's a terrible economics, and I think it's something pretty much all economists would agree on. You don't want to... I mean, the price of gasoline is high for a reason, and it's not some failed policies in the U.S. It's a worldwide phenomenon, and it's because of the disruptions, among other things, because of the disruptions of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions. We don't want to encourage motorists to drive more, which they will do if we cut the gasoline tax. We want them to the extent possible, to drive less. You mentioned the effect of high gas prices and other retail prices on consumers' households, including low-income households. It's the lowest income households don't necessarily drive much. They may take public transit or whatever. But I'm in favor, regardless of taking the revenue that would be raised from the gas tax or from I think sanctions against Russia should take the form of a tariff rather than just cutting off imports of oil and natural gas. And these have in common that they generate revenue, and we could redistribute the revenue in any way you want to low-income households to make up for the effect of higher energy prices on them.
So just finally, wrapping up, Professor, how do you rate the Biden administration so far on energy policy?
I think they've done a fairly good job on the gas tax holiday. I'm not quite sure what their position is, but I think if they blame big oil corporations for the increase in energy prices, that's not right. But people who blame Biden are not right either. It's a global phenomenon. I would give the Biden administration pretty high ratings on their handling of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the various energy and other sanctions that they've implemented in response.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for being on the program. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.